Hello and welcome to my Leadership Behavior Podcast. My name is Edbert Abebe, and today we're going to be talking about leadership is not a person, but an activity. In the first episode of this podcast, I shared an intriguing perspective that leadership isn't just about individuals. It's a collective act, it's a skill, it's a behavior we can all develop. Understanding leadership in this way is important because it helps us to discover the essence of leadership. By doing so, we can also identify what doesn't represent effective leadership and also recognize where individuals might have stumbled along the way. The good news is that we can learn from these experiences and improve our actions, both now and in the future. The practice of leadership has evolved over many centuries, starting with the traits theory, where leadership capacity was thought to reside in a few individuals who happened to be men by the way. In our society today, we often find ourselves idolizing certain figures. We view them as great leaders. We write books about them and even create movies. Yet we sometimes overlook the fact that they too made mistakes in their time. Take Winston Churchill, for example. He's celebrated as one of the most outstanding leaders and prime ministers of the 20th century in Great Britain. However, history reminds us that had it not been for his courageous actions during World War II, he might have been remembered quite differently. His decisions led to the significant losses during World War I, and some argue that his role as Chancellor played a part in the Great Depression of the 1920s. Yet, his leadership during Second World War, when he united and inspired an entire nation to stand up against Adolf Hitler, was truly remarkable. So, how can we grow and refine our approach to leadership if we continue to believe that true leadership is solely defined by personality, title, or role? Another inspiring example is the great Nelson Mandela, fondly referred to as Madiba. Many would agree that his leadership actions in uniting South Africa upon becoming the first black post-apartheid president was extraordinary. By choosing forgiveness and leaving the past behind, he set a powerful example for all South Africans. However, when it comes to the sensitive topic of land, which is still an issue to date, a deeply felt issue for most black South Africans, there are different opinions about Mandela's leadership in that area. Ultimately, the evaluation of leadership should not rest on personalities, titles, or positions. It should focus on the tangible work and progress made in tackling significant challenges. Personally, I wear many hats. Firstly, as a father, a husband, a boss in the office, an authority figure in my local faith community. Among others, I consistently reflect now and again on my leadership actions and practices. It's essential to recognize that it's entirely possible to excel in one role while facing challenges in another. Leadership is a skill that can be nurtured, and we must remain open to learning from both our successes and our failures. Bill George said that leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Also, Ron Heifetz, in his book, Leadership Without Easy Answers, said, a leader's job is not to provide all the answers, but to create conditions where people can learn, grow, and solve their own problems. I want us to look at 4 or 5 points that emphasize the idea that leadership is an activity, is what you do, and it's not the individual. And number 1 is leadership is an activity, it's not a role. Leadership is fundamentally about mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges and move toward meaningful progress. It's a verb, and we'll keep emphasizing that, not a noun. Emphasizing action over identity. The focus shifts from who the leader is to what the leader accomplishes. This perspective reframes leadership as something anyone can practice, rather than a quality reserved for those with formal titles. Viewing leadership as an activity, as an action, democratizes its practice. It underscores that leadership is not the prerogative of a select few, but is accessible to anyone willing to engage in the work of leadership in addressing complex issues. The person initiating these actions could be a CEO, a team member, or even someone outside the organization. The activity itself is what defines leadership. An activity-focused view view also prioritizes outcomes over appearances. A person might hold a leadership title but fail to exhibit leadership actions. Conversely, someone without authority might step forward to facilitate difficult conversations or guide the group toward resolution. This distinction separates leadership from authority and status. Ultimately, thinking of leadership as an activity places responsibility on individuals and groups to create change rather than waiting for someone with the title label to step in. Point number 2. We have to understand that leadership is contextual. Leadership is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. Its effectiveness depends on the context in which it is exercised, including the specific challenges, the stakeholders involved, and also dynamics that are involved. Successful leadership begins with a deep understanding of the environment and the unique demands it places on the authority figure or the leader. Contextual leadership involves diagnosing the situation carefully to determine whether the challenge is adaptive or technical. We'll talk about that much more later. This diagnostic work is critical because adaptive challenges require a different approach than technical problems. Misdiagnosing the challenge can lead to ineffective solutions and also erode trust. Where the diagnosis is wrong, the prescription will be wrong as well. Leaders must be attuned to the cultural and emotional dimensions of the context. For example, leading a change initiative in a home or a small community organization would differ significantly from doing so in a multinational corporation. Effective leadership requires sensitivity to these nuances and the ability to adapt strategies accordingly. Moreover, the contextual nature of leadership means that it is inherently situational. What works in one context might not work in another, even for the same leader. This reinforces the idea that leadership is a process of continuous learning and adaptation rather than a fixed set of skills or traits. My third point is that leadership requires collaboration. Leadership is inherently collaborative, especially when addressing what we call adaptive challenges. The complexity of these challenges demands diverse perspectives, expertise, and efforts. No single person can resolve such issues alone, making collaboration a central element for effective leadership. Collaboration fosters inclusivity and ensures that all voices are heard. This is particularly important when dealing with adaptive challenges, where the problem and the solutions often cut across traditional boundaries. By involving a broad range of stakeholders, leaders can draw on collective wisdom to create more robust and sustainable solutions. Collaboration also builds trust and shared ownership of the process. When people feel included and valued, they are more likely to invest in the outcome. This is especially critical when the solutions require significant changes in behavior or thinking, as people are more willing to adapt when they feel part of the process. Collaborative leadership emphasizes facilitation over command rather than dictating solutions. Authority figures in a collaborative mode guide the group, encouraging open dialogue and creative problem solving. And this approach underscores the distributed nature of leadership and also reinforces that it's an activity shared by all. And fourthly, leadership is a process. Leadership is an ongoing process of engagement, learning, and adaptation. It is not static. It is not a one-time act, but a continuous effort to mobilize people and also to create change. As a process, leadership involves diagnosing challenges, designing interventions, and constantly assessing their impact. It requires flexibility and a willingness to adjust strategies as new information emerges. This iterative approach is particularly important in adaptive contexts where solutions evolve over time. The process of leadership also requires emotional resilience. Leaders must remain steady in the face of resistance and setbacks, helping others navigate uncertainty and discomfort. Finally, viewing leadership as a process reinforces the idea that it is not tied to any one person. It is a shared journey shaped by the contributions of everyone involved. This perspective shifts focus from individual leaders to collective action, underscoring the broader systemic nature. Leadership is not about you. It's about the difference you make. James Koza says, leadership is not about the next step on the ladder. It's about the next step in the journey. This is by Simon Sinek. I'll leave you with a reflection because leadership is a process and a practice. So I want you to think about what specific progress have you made on your leadership journey in the last month. And by way of an action plan, I want you to identify 2 actions to carry out in the next 48 hours in relation to your friends, your colleagues, your family, and your work team. Because leadership is not a person. It's what you do. It's an activity. It's taking action. I hope this has been useful. Hope you learned something. Look forward to the next episode. And then also let me have your thoughts. Put it in, you can send me an email and let's know if this has been helpful. I'm looking forward to coming your way again. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.